Good evening, Zion Wayside. It's Pastor Welter here, back with another Wednesday devotion. Things are really rolling around here. There is a lot going on, especially as we look forward to Thanksgiving. And then as soon as we hit Thanksgiving, it's the Advent season, and then we're here for Christmas. This is not very far away, and you probably already feel like you're behind on shopping or decorating. It just all moves so fast. And as we grow up, it just seems to move faster and faster. But tomorrow, before we get to all that Advent and Christmas, we are excited about tomorrow. And that is because our deer hunter service is back as the season gets ready to kick off. The gun season gets ready to kick off this weekend. And I know that is something that so many look forward to around here, either heading up north or staying around here. But it's something that's looked forward to all year. And it is finally here. We want to celebrate that and get that kicked off, ask for God's blessing as so many head off into the hunt. And so I got that pulled up here. This is on our Facebook page, the Deer Hunter Service. That's tomorrow, Thursday, November 18th. There is dinner at 6, and then we'll start our service at 7. And Pastor Vernheim is going to be our speaker. Many of you know him. He helped during the vacancy here a number of years ago. And so we are glad to welcome him back and look forward to seeing him. But before that happens tomorrow in the evening, really exciting in the morning for many in our community. Here it is. The Reedsville High School football team is competing for a state championship down in Madison. Game is at 10 o'clock tomorrow. And super excited for them. Super excited for all the friends and family as they go down there, cheer them on. Huge deal. And I wish them the best, wish them victory, and they'll probably go down in history as a Reedsville legends, those that were on the teams. And a number of the players and key players on that team actually from this church, graduates from this school. And so that is awesome to see. Their head coach is also a member here at Zion Wayside. And so we were rooting for them, pulling for them. They have been rolling themselves, just crushing teams through the playoffs. And so hope to see that win. I know I can't make it to the game tomorrow, but I will be tuning in, watching it on TV, and can't wait to hopefully celebrate that win, that victory, that state championship. And then that'll definitely set a good mood for the Deer Hunter service that evening, as that's at the Reedsville Sportsman's Club. So really excited for all of them that are headed down to Madison for that. The week after that, Thanksgiving, of course, see that on the top of our Facebook page, Wednesday and Thursday, 2 services available to you. Same service, Thanksgiving Eve and Thanksgiving Day, 7 p.m. and 9:30 a.m. Certainly want to gather to give thanks for God. And we can do that, whether our teams win or lose, whether life is a good day or a bad day, a tough season or a prosperous one. Hey, Paul says in 1 Thessalonians, give thanks in all circumstances. So we do that, and we gather to do that here at our church. And we give thanks to God for his continued mercy and provision and all that he does. Well, what we're going to do is continue on through our Hebrews series. So just a quick, abrupt transition. Now we're going to head towards that after a few announcements. We were marching right through there. Hebrews, we wrapped up chapter 6 with Pastor Kyle. We're now on chapter 7, and I want to spend a few minutes talking about this. This is about a guy named Melchizedek. Maybe you've heard that name, maybe not. Of course, it's not a common name, but it is really important in understanding who Jesus is, and it's amazing to see God working all the way from the Old Testament in the days of Abraham and seeing him begin to weave his plan towards the Messiah and the salvation of all mankind. Even then, as we see these parallels between Jesus as the Messiah and this character in the Old Testament. And when I say character, I mean real person, but this person, Melchizedek. So let's read. Let's jump in and read. This is a reference from Genesis 14. So I'm going to go back there. And it's only 4 verses in Genesis. And that's all we know about this person named Melchizedek. And I believe that's intentional as it sets up these comparisons to Jesus. So Abraham has been in a battle. He's fought some of his enemies with his own kinsmen, it says. and he's returning from his victory, returning from the defeat of his enemies. And so verse 17 of Genesis 14 says, after his, that's Abraham, after his return from the defeat of the Kedar and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shavah, that is the King's Valley. And here's the name, and Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High, and he blessed Abraham, and said, blessed be Abram by God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And Abram gave him a tenth of everything. So that's it. That is the extent of Melchizedek that is known. He's referenced one other time in Psalm 110. If I could show you that real quick. This is a messianic prophecy here in this psalm, and Hebrews ties this all together about how Jesus is in this order of Melchizedek. We'll talk about it in a little bit. But here it says in verse 4, the Lord has sworn and will not change his mind. Speaking of the Messiah that is to come, you are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. You see that there. So that's it. That's the extent of all the Old Testament references to this person. We've already heard his name a couple times in Hebrews in chapter 5, and now here in 7 and going forward. So let's take a look at some of this. I wish we could spend more time and go through really this whole thing, but what I'm going to try to do is just summarize it, take those big points, and then kind of take some application with that. But the priestly order of Melchizedek. So firstly, when we talk about Jesus as the Messiah, he has a threefold office that he fulfills. And so that is of prophet and of priest and king. When we say prophet, we talk about what was the prophet's role in the Old Testament? Well, a prophet was a messenger of God. God gave his word to a prophet. His prophet would go to his people and say, thus says the Lord, right? That we hear about that. Elijah, Elisha, Jeremiah, Isaiah, the minor prophets. Those are the prophets at the end of the Old Testament. So they speak on behalf of God to the people, bringing them warnings, encouragements, speaking repentance, sometimes words of comfort, forgiveness, admonition, exhortation, all these things. So Jesus is that, correct? I mean, he comes and he speaks God's word. He teaches, he brings that message of God to the people. Now, priest in the Old Testament functioned in the opposite of that. So he was a representative of the people who would stand before God. And so we see this within the temple. The priest would be the one to bring the sacrifices on behalf of all the people of Israel. All the people of Israel, the hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions. This one person who would be considered the high priest would stand in their place and in their stead and offer sacrifices to God. And so this is seen even in the garments that they are commanded to wear. On each shoulder is on a stone engraved 6 tribes of Israel, 6 on one side, 6 on the other. There's 12 tribes. On his chest, he wore a breastplate with 12 unique and rare stones, each with one of the tribes of Israel etched on them. And so he was seen as that person who, on behalf of the people, goes to God and presents that sacrifice. He's their intercessor, right? The intermediary. There was an area of the temple that nobody could go into because it was said the presence of God was there. Nobody could go into except the high priest once a year on the Day of Atonement to offer sacrifice for the people. Jesus fulfills this, and this is what this chapter 7 is getting at. And then there's the office of king. Well, we see that in the Old Testament. The king rules, and Jesus he's king. He says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. I mean, that's another way of saying all authority in the universe. There is no higher ruler than Jesus, as he sits at the right hand of God. So he's prophet, he's priest, he's king. What we're focusing on here is priest. And that's what chapter 7 here does, is that Jesus is a greater, higher priest, greater than any priest that has come before in the Old Testament. As we'll see, those priests, they lived, they died, another one came, they lived, they died, they had to continually offer sacrifices. Jesus lives forever. He's offered one sacrifice for the salvation of mankind, never to be sacrificed again. So he is the priest that intercedes on our behalf, offers the sacrifice of himself, sheds his blood, and accomplishes for that. So this is how this Melchizedek plays into that and reinforces that this is a role that Jesus was sent for to fulfill. And it shows us that the things that God had, the ways that God acted in the Old Testament, the rules that he gave the people, all point to Jesus. This is so important when reading our Old Testament. It doesn't just stand alone on its own anymore, but it is always interpreted through the lens of Jesus and what God was accomplishing through the Old Testament, and now pointing us to Jesus. So even the temple and its sacrificial system, the priest's garments, this priest named Melchizedek, all point to Jesus, and that he is the greater fulfillment of those things. We don't need the temple sacrificial system anymore because Jesus has been sacrificed. We don't need priests to intercede on our behalf anymore because Jesus has done it, and continually so, as we'll see in chapter 7. So we'll read through some of this and we'll see those things highlighted out, and what it means for you as well. So verse 1 of chapter 7, for this Melchizedek, king of Salem. Salem was referencing, it's talking about Jerusalem. Salem means peace, and this was a former name for Jerusalem. It's referenced in the Old Testament a couple times in that way. So he was a priest and a king himself, and priest of the Most High God. He met Abraham, we read this, returning from the slaughter of the kings, and he blessed him. And to him, Abraham apportioned the 10th part of everything, so he tithed to him. He is, by translation of his name, King of Righteousness. So this Melchizedek, his name literally means in the Hebrew, the first part of it is Melech, that means king. Zedek, the second part of his name means righteousness. So he's the king of righteousness. But at the same time, it says then he is also the king of Salem, that is the king of peace. So he's the king of righteousness. He's the king of peace. Right? This is who Jesus is, isn't he? He is the king of righteousness and holiness. And as we hear that word righteousness, we think about the wrath and the punishment that is due because we are not righteous. Yet at the same time, he is the king of peace. And he brings reconciliation, and he bridges that gap between our sin and his righteousness through the moment of the cross. And he takes that righteous punishment of God the Father on the cross and gives us his righteousness, which grants us peace in our relationship with God. He accomplishes both of this. Now, what's really interesting is that Jesus is said to be, as we're going to get here later, they're saying this of Jesus, that he says, you are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. What's really fascinating in the Old Testament, Melchizedek is not from the Levitical tribe and lineage of priests. So as the Israelites are freed from Egypt and they're in the desert, God sets up the 12 tribes, and he said there will be this one tribe of the Levites. Their function is to, and it's derived from Aaron as well. Their job is to do the priestly work in the temple. And so that was, you could only be a priest by right of your heritage, your lineage, your genealogy. Melchizedek, this encounter with Abraham actually comes hundreds of years before Moses, before the creation of the Levites and those priests. And you have this guy who is a priest of God. You know, it says he is priest of the Most High God. Yet before that lineage is established a little bit later. And there's not much known about him in the Old Testament writing, right? It says here, we don't know He is without father or mother or genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but resembling the Son of God, he continues as a priest forever. Right? We don't, and that's just saying that we're not given his genealogy because it doesn't matter. That's not what the focus is. He just kind of shows up, blesses Abraham. We're told he is a priest, and God is doing his work already, and then he just goes away. But he blesses Abraham, and it's drawing that comparison to Jesus, who is a priest forever. He is a priest forever. And this is, what we are told here in verse 23. The former priests were many in number because they were prevented by death from continuing in office. It's a problem we all have. But Jesus holds the priesthood permanently because he continues forever. Consequently, he is able to save to the uttermost, or at all times, those who draw near to God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them. And so Jesus continually stands in that position as high priest on behalf of you before the Father, always declaring your innocence and your righteousness, your adoption is into his kingdom. So not intercessing just only in prayer, we would say, but just continually in your life, Jesus stands before the Father, in a sense, pleading your case on account of what he has done. And this is what no earthly priest could do, but all they could do was offer temporary sacrifices for that. And this is really just the point of Hebrews. So we talked about that office of the priest, but Hebrews really, really hammers this point home, that the things of the Old Testament were good, but they point to Jesus, who is better. And it's not the law that we are saved through, but it is through his work. It is through Christ's work, not our own work. I was just looking for where verse 11 here. Now, if perfection had been attainable through the Levitical priesthood, for under it the people received the law, what further need would there have been for a priest to arise after the order of Melchizedek, rather than one named after the order of Aaron? So he said, if we could have achieved perfection, the holiness, the righteousness of God through the laws of the Levites, the priesthood, well, then we wouldn't need something more. We could just obey those laws, and then God would count it to us as righteousness, but it's not. It's counted to us as righteousness by faith on account of the works that Jesus has done for us, and as he stands as our intercessor, showing his sacrifice to God the Father. And this is just going to be driven home so hard when we get to chapter 11. That's the hall of faith passages. By faith Abraham, by faith Noah, by faith David, by faith Samson, by faith, all these heroes of the faith who were saved by faith, not by works of the Levitical law. So fascinating stuff. At least I find it fascinating. I hope it's interesting to you, and I hope you can see how Jesus, being a priest, directly applies to you as he pleads your case before the Father, and declares you innocent and righteous and holy. Well, that wraps up 7. We'll continue on in our series. I think we got a different Thanksgiving devotion for you next week, and then we'll continue on through Hebrews. Good luck to the Reedville Panthers tomorrow. Hope you get that win, and I hope to see a lot of you at our Deer Hunter service. God's blessings, and I hope this finds you well wherever you are.